His presentation is called A Tale of Two Cities. His book is called Make the Impossible Possible, and he's in town today to share his story of one man's crusade to inspire others to dream bigger and achieve the extraordinary. His name is Bill Strickland, and he joins us in studio with a man who's no stranger to these parts, Mark Chamberlain, chair of Hamilton's Jobs Prosperity Collaborative. Bill, we're going to start with you. Tell us about your template for social change and how it is helping transform Pittsburgh as we speak and could transform Hamilton in this tale of two cities.
Basically, it's an autobiographical story. Public school teachers saved my life when I was in the inner city of Pittsburgh. Got me excited about ceramics. I got pretty good at it. Mr. Ross says, "You're too smart to die. I don't want it on my conscience. I'm leaving the school and you're going with me." And he helped me get into the University of Pittsburgh as a probationary student because I didn't do well in the entrance exam. Well, not only did I graduate from the University of Pittsburgh with honors, I'm now a trustee of the University of Pittsburgh. And I actually was the commencement speaker. And I got up in front of 13,000 people and said, "Don't give up on the poor kids. They might end up being a commencement speaker someday." And basically that's the story. I've committed myself to taking people who have basically been considered liabilities on the social side and turning them into assets on vocational education and arts education. We've been doing this now for over 40 years in one of the toughest neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, and we've got some pretty extraordinary stories to recite as the result of this work that we've been doing. And one of the things that we've been able to say definitively is that we can train high-quality technicians with people who are on public assistance and welfare, who've had no necessarily any contact with science, and have them performing as very capable lab technicians, biotechnicians, pharmaceutical technicians, and so forth in less than 12 months. So that has been great news for people to realize, not the least of which the students themselves. And on the art side of the street, it's kind of my autobiography, but we now work with 500 kids who are very challenged kids who may not graduate from the public school system. We graduated 90% of those kids, and the last time we took a look, 5 of the faculty are former kids who went to college, are back teaching at the center that saved their life. And the last time we looked, we had a kid at the Harvard Business School and our first orthopedic surgeon, all kids who were considered liabilities in the educational system that we turned into assets. Wow. So it's the distillation of all those ideas that we now operate in one center called Manchester Bidwell Corporation.
And Mark, this is encouraging for the JPC, I would assume. You brought him into town to speak tonight.
It's very encouraging. It's not to say that there's not a lot of wonderful things happening in Hamilton, because there are. A lot of things that Bill will speak to this evening. Many people in Hamilton will be looking and saying, we fit that mold, we are doing these things, we understand. But I think having Bill come in with a very complete story, again, as he suggests, it's basically an autobiography, but suggesting and showing and illustrating. I find that you can't get enough illustrations and stories to help guide and give us in our city sometimes ideas, sometimes imagination, and always some hope. So Bill's here tonight, I think, with a spectacular message around what we think is core to all jobs, all economic development, and that's the people, the human capital and the human capital development that Bill speaks so eloquently about.
Bill, how did you get people to buy into this message?
Well, I've been at this for quite a few years, but I think what attracts many corporate leaders is our kind of innovative approach to education. Many years ago, I sort of came up with this idea of starting with the employers before I started teaching things. It's a very simple idea. So I went to Bayer and Calgon Carbon and BASF and Nova Chemical and basically said, I would like to train people for you, African-American people, oftentimes poor people, and I believe I can train competent technicians that will exceed your entrance requirements. They were intrigued with the idea. One of the companies loaned me a technician. We wrote the ideal program for Chemtechs. We've never looked back. So that was the template. Our guys built the cable system for Pittsburgh when Warner Cable, which was the forerunner of Comcast, got the cable contract. They contracted with us to train the technicians who actually ultimately built the center for the whole city of Pittsburgh. It's still functioning at a very high level. So industry is very excited because they get people who are qualified to do what they do. They also get people who are considered liabilities in the community who are now become assets and are productive, contributing citizens. And it's a great corporate social responsibility story. On the educational side, The kids are not dropping out of high school at the rate of 50%. They're graduating at the rate of 90%, and many of those kids are going on to undergraduate programs, not necessarily in the arts, but they become productive citizens in the community, and that's the strategy we feel that can be very effective in reducing, if not eliminating, poverty in any urban environment.
Okay, Mark, under the JPC umbrella, you have people heading up, I think it's 7 various initiatives. How important is this one under that umbrella?
I think it's probably the most critical. As you mentioned, we have a number of what we call pillars. And this is where a very broad community got together and said, what makes up a community that is both ready to create and sustain living wage and environmentally responsible jobs. And we came up with basically 7 major priorities: innovation and learning, immigration, our economic portfolio, land use, I think I mentioned image, quality of life. These are all very, very key. But within the innovation and learning component of it, which is when we speak of it, is really what I think Bill speaks to, is looking at the individuals. And we look at those individuals from the time they are born, in fact prenatal, in terms of, and you've heard us say, how do we make Hamilton the best place to raise a child? What we're really saying is creating the environment for a child all the way through their entire growth to right up into adulthood, where they might need new skills or to be reskilled, allowing them to take on continuous learning, continuous support. And so it is, I would call it the critical and the bullseye that we focus on, which is why we've asked Bill to come and speak. You know, there's always other topics. We can talk about the quality of life, which is critical. We can talk about our image, which is critical. We can talk about a really strong economic portfolio, which is also critical. But they're all underlined and based by the grassroots, individuals in the community actually making it happen. And so I think the story that the bill speaks to, which I think we think is core, is first of all believing that all people, not just one or two, but every single individual in this community has an opportunity to be not a liability, but actually be an asset. Everyone has something. One of the challenges we have as communities is to discover what their talents are, what their assets are.